Welcome to Solo Journeys podcast, where every journey starts with a single step. Episode 4: Female Solo Traveling. I'm your host Sashi, and this podcast is all about solo journeys and its philosophy. In today's episode, I'm chatting with my Airbnb guest Mandy from Minnesota, the United States, who is currently working and traveling and is an enthusiast female solo traveler. Mandy has some fantastic experiences and valuable tips to share. Don't miss it. Hi Mandy, welcome to Solo Journeys podcast. I would like to start out our talk with a question. Who is Mandy?
That's a very deep question. I am a middle-aged woman from Minnesota and generally from the Midwest most of my life. I work in 2 jobs right now, actually. Part-time working in kind of corporate travel, technology light. I build mobile apps for corporate events and incentive trips. And in my other life, I am a travel agent. And I specialize in UK and Ireland and Europe, Scandinavia, and I specialize in female solo travel. Pretty much how I've always traveled my whole life. I grew up traveling with my parents a lot. I think that's actually made me a person who travels so much. My parents both worked for school districts, so they both had the summers mostly off. So we were able to do road trips, and my dad was really into planning, so he would put together these elaborate, like everything had a theme. So like one year we did the Northeast of the United States, and we went to Boston, and we went to New York, and we went to Gettysburg, and we did all these things, and we went to battlefields and museums and things that were all related to an area or a topic. Different year we went to the Southeast, so we were down through like Georgia, Florida, Mississippi, that sort of thing, and that sort of thing every year. We would have kind of a new road trip that we did. So for that reason, I've been to 48 U.S. states, and this month, I've hit 39 countries.
Just checking how many states in the US. Oh, you do have one to go?
2 to go. Two to go. I need Alaska and Oregon. This particular journey it's kind of gone through, it's actually, I was thinking about it in 7 stages. It started alone and it's ending alone. But in the middle, I had travel with a friend, and I had travel for work. And then I came out of the work part and went back to traveling alone. So this is kind of how I typically travel, because my job lends itself to me traveling. How should I say? I do what we call extending off of a trip. So if I go for work and they pay for the flight, then I will stay somewhere a little bit longer, or I'll take a short little flight and do something after, since I don't have to pay for the full flight. So, and the particular event that I just worked happens every August, so I do that every August. I do it a lot more than that, but this particular one's pretty much always in Europe. So, for instance, last year we were in Dublin, and a few friends and I went and did a road trip throughout most of Ireland. And then at the end, I went over to England and did some traveling on my own. So a lot of times I'm not entirely traveling alone the whole time. It's usually just a part of it, although I have certainly traveled alone from beginning to end as well. I did that last year. I went to Scotland. I kind of needed a break. I went to the mountains of Scotland in like late February, which is not really a time when people think about going to Scotland. And I rented like an Airbnb that was an old sheep barn or something, and at the base of a mountain. And I just holed up in there for a week. I went hiking every day. And
did you get what you were
needed out of it? Absolutely. It was one of the best trips I've ever done. I don't know, as a world, I think people that don't travel ever, never leave their corner of the world, it's easy for them to become very one-minded and just, this is the best way, it's the only way. And like, you don't even know how there's a whole entire world out there and around. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. And I haven't even been to like, oh my gosh, I haven't even been to a fourth of the countries in the world. I mean, I've mostly been in Europe and like the Caribbean and stuff like that, but I haven't been to Asia, and I know that's very different, and I'm dying to go there. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of the next step, is like Japan, Thailand, that sort of thing. That's a whole different way of living. It's fascinating. Going to a place and staying there for a little longer if I can, and doing sort of like an Airbnb or an apartment situation, because I like to see how people live. I like to live in the neighborhood. I like to go to the grocery store. I love to cook in a place, go to the grocery store and get food and like live like a person and not just like a tourist. be more like a traveler.
Maybe a little bit about your work and travel. How do you find that? How do you plan that?
So I kind of came into this job kind of later. I've had a lot of different jobs over the years. Lived in a couple different states in the U.S., but I've always been a big traveler. I studied abroad when I was in college, which I think sparked that. So when I came to this job, the traveling aspect of it was the most exciting part for me, and it's probably the part that keeps me the most excited to this day. So, like for this trip, we do a lot of work we come and site, we help everybody. Like when I build an app, I help support the app, and we do a bunch of technology things for the event, and then we go home. And then we go home. And I end up doing that. A lot of corporations do these kinds of trips. So sometimes they're meetings, sometimes they're incentives. It kind of depends on the client and the situation. I also do work, for instance, with a major airline in the US. So it just really depends what they need. But the traveling aspect is my favorite part. And that is always kind of kickstarts me doing some more stuff on my own. Usually after I'm kind of an extroverted introvert, as they call us. So I use all my, I turn it on when I'm working, but I like the solo travel aspect because then when I'm exhausted mentally, I can just be alone and do what I want to do. I think that's one of the greatest things about solo traveling is that you're on your own time schedule. You don't have the pressure to be like, I got to get up because so-and-so is either up or they really want to hit 10 things before the end of the day and you're just not feeling it. I tend to travel very intuitively. Like, I'm going to get up. I'm not going to push it unless I really have like a tour or something I really want to do really badly. I plan the bare bones of the trip in terms of I know where I'm going to stay, obviously get flights and stuff like that. I always use travel insurance. I'm a big fan of travel insurance for some of the things that have happened to me over time. My experience has made me always get travel insurance. But I don't over plan, especially when it's just me. If I'm traveling with somebody else and they have kind of their own agenda, we try to do that together. But if it's just me traveling, I tend to, again, just build out the bare bones, maybe do a little research and think, here's the 2 or 3 things I really want to do in this area. If I just get those, it's a successful trip, and everything else I just kind of do intuitively. It's like, how do I feel today? What am I inspired to do? Yeah, exactly. What if somebody, I might meet somebody like you and be like, you should see this, this, and this. Like, oh, okay. These are things that locals will know more than me reading in a book. So I like to start somewhere. Yeah, I try to be somewhat spontaneous. I used to not be that way, but I find now I'm just happier. I already stress enough in the job part of my life that I want the travel to be not stressful. I want it to be rejuvenating and stuff.
Can you say that you relax and recreate best when you are on solo trip?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, it is. It's absolutely true because, unless you're a person that really gets a lot of energy from other people, if you are absolutely a social butterfly type, a pure extrovert, I can see why solo travel might be scary or boring or how can I be with myself? But I really think that traveling alone, it empowers you in a way, especially as a woman, to we're very used to relying on other people, I think, especially if you've been in a relationship or with your parents or you've lived with your parents and things like that over time. You learn to lean on other people, and that is fine. It's not like we should all be lone wolves in the world, but you really learn that you can deal with things because you're the only one there. And I've had flat tires in France. The tow truck driver did not speak English. I had to figure it out. You just figure it out and you realize that you're capable of a lot more than you think you are.
Mandy, you mentioned also something about that you do some projects for female solo travelers. Could you tell us more a little bit about it?
So this is kind of a small niche that I am specifically in my travel agent business. Because I do so much solo travel. And I know there's a lot of women, especially 30s, 40s, 50s aged women, they just want to travel and they have the means to do it, but for whatever reason, they want to do something their friends don't want to do, or they're not in a relationship and they just want to do their own thing, or they have the time that their friends don't have and they're like, I want to spend 2 to 3 weeks somewhere, But who can do that but me? Like, not everybody can take off that much time from work. So, I'm kind of there to help make them feel more confident. I had a lead that I had a gal from the east coast of the U.S., and she found me through just this internet search because I am a solo female travel expert. She was just like, this is my first trip overseas. I'm doing it alone. What do I need to know? And I was like, let me tell you all the things, all the things that I do, especially in a country like she was in England and Amsterdam. And those are both places I've been multiple times. So I can tell you right off the bat, like, here's the things I do when I go there. Here's the places I go. Here's the tips. And traveling as a woman alone is very different than traveling as a man alone, I believe. You can go certainly a lot more places as a man and feel safe. So encouraging people to go to places where I've felt safe and situations, like making them feel better. Like, it's not the scariest thing in the world. You just have to keep your head about you. Don't go into dark alleys where drunk or something. Like, just be mindful. But it's not scary, especially if there's certain places where it probably would be very scary, actually. But I don't typically go to those places.
And I don't recommend them.
Yeah, exactly.
Mandy, if you are talking already about your project, maybe you can say how somebody can find you.
I work for a travel agency called Live Well Travel. We are based in Minnesota, and we have a website. I also have an email address, Mandy, M-A-N-D-Y, Davis, D-A-V-I-S, at lwtravel.org. We also have a website, of course, lwtravel.org. So check us out. We're very much focused on the wellness aspect in terms of empowering women, making people feel like we're not always the cheapest thing, and we're not all just trying to find the cheapest thing we can ever do, but we want people to go and truly rejuvenated, refreshed, have a great time, not have to worry about things. So we tend to focus on sort of mid-range to luxury travel typically, but we can certainly work with any budget. But we just tend to find that those experiences are best when people have a little bit of means to feel like they can find a place that they can afford a place that's going to be safe and in a good part of town and these sorts of things. It just is what it is.
Totally agree that accommodation plays a big role in the whole traveling experience. So yes, don't save money on accommodation.
I don't do hostels anymore and things like that. I'm just not at that age, I would say. I have done it. I can say I've done it. I did that when I was like 21, but I don't do that anymore. And the older you get, the more you're like, here's the things that are kind of must-haves. And the accommodation usually is the biggest thing for me. It don't need to be luxury. I'm clearly renting a room in your place. It's not like I'm in Four Seasons here, but I need to feel like safe. I need to feel comfortable. Yeah, there's certain things that I'm going to be looking for in terms of just what's provided. I look at, obviously things like reviews, and like we do, everybody looks at reviews nowadays. I usually I look at things and try to get a gut feeling about it. I've been pretty successful, knock on wood, with accommodations through Airbnb, actually. And the funny thing is, as a travel agent, I don't use Airbnb because it's a totally different system than what travel agents do. But we have similar types of things in terms of book people in like little apartments and things like that. That's definitely something that a travel agent can do. But when I'm traveling alone, I'm, spending a night somewhere. An Airbnb is perfect because I'm just looking for a place to crash. I'm looking for air conditioning in a hot place. Whatever it is. And like, I don't want to spend a crazy amount of money, especially like I'm going on a flight tomorrow. Like, I'm not going to be doing much, but I just wanted a place that I felt this is a good place for me. Get some good sleep before an early flight. And you may wonder why I chose your Airbnb.
How do you know?
I will say, in your name or description, you do mention something about a solo traveler, and that drew my eye because I'm clearly a solo traveler, and I was like, perfect. That's a place just for me. And I do look female versus male. I actually stayed when I was in Zurich on the front end of this little Switzerland mini tour. I stayed in a place for a night, and it was a guy. And while it was clean and everything, like it was probably the cleanest guy I've ever seen. Oh my gosh. It still felt different. I was still hyper aware that there's a guy in the next room, and it still, as a woman, it still lives in your brain. I think I even had a dream about it, honestly. And I was just like, ugh. Like, nothing obviously happened. Very nice man. Nothing weird. But it still changes how you rest and how you feel comfortable in a place. I don't think I would have stayed in a place with just a guy for more than one night. It was a very quick situation. I think I saw him for 30 seconds. And, like in your place, for instance, I would stay for multiple days because I feel very comfortable here. Yeah, more relaxed. The way we talked was like right away we could have a conversation. Obviously, whatever you put into your, Airbnb listing made me feel comfortable. And you obviously had good reviews, so that helps too.
I'm surprised to hear that the headline works. How did you start? How did you come up with an idea that you want to facilitate solo women for such trips?
I think I wished I had somebody teach me these things because I just kind of either did it with just me or did it with me and one friend or something like that pretty early on when I started traveling internationally. So I wish I like putting these trips together because I wish I had somebody do the same thing for me when I was first starting to travel, because there's a lot of just little tips and tricks that you can learn, and just having another woman who's been there, it just makes you feel more comfortable. Yeah, I've had so many women because I'm not a big social media poster. I probably should do more. I have tons of content. I just don't post very much, but our agency does post a lot. I've had so many women go, but I do post at least where I go from place to place, so you can kind of see my travels, which ironically is sort of something I do as sort of like a proof of life thing, so people know I'm still alive. Because when you're alone, like people don't know, like you just like, hey, you doing there? That's kind of where people know I'm still traveling or whatever. I've had so many women reach out to me and say, I wish I could do what you do. I wish I could travel like you do. I'm just too scared. I'm always like, you can do it. You just need to if I can do it, you can do it. I mean, I'm a hyper independent person, to be fair, but most of the people that I talk to, I'm like, you could do it. Like, you just have to have confidence that you would be okay. And don't go to a place where you're literally gonna immediately put on the wrong foot. Go to a place where they speak English to start. Go to England, go to Australia, go to some place where at least they're speaking English, so you don't have to worry about the language aspect. I think that's a good place. Granted, if you're American, if you're from some other country, if you're from France, go to some place that speaks French. I mean, just start with something where you don't have to. You take out the big chunk of language as a factor until you're more confident, I think.
Until you get the taste of it.
Exactly. Until you get the taste. Once you have the taste of solo travel, you never want to go. It's funny because I do more and more as time goes on. I started off really small and I was okay, maybe. And then I was like, I'll do one solo trip a year. And now I want to travel solo all the time.
So funny. I'm planning to go to Montenegro.
I just was there. I love Montenegro. Highly recommend Montenegro. It's Croatia gets so much more kind of press, and it's, snazzy, and it's a wonderful country as well. For the little parts that I've seen, I'm planning to go back there too. But when I did a tour about a month ago with a very small group tour. It was not solo, but it was with 8 people. And it was a specific tour because it was going through Albania, it was going through North Macedonia, Kosovo. I mean, some areas that it's a different world, kind of former Yugoslavia. And I wanted sort of the context and stuff. There's a lot of historical context there. But Montenegro was the one place, if somebody said, of those countries, which one did you like the best? Hands down, Montenegro. It's gorgeous. If you like mountains, which you're in Switzerland, so you're going to, oh my gosh. If we stayed in this town called Kotor, and it's all about the cats. You're going to love it. It's got cats everywhere. You're a cat mama. You're gonna love the cat because it's literally part of those cats just freely roam. They're everywhere. They have all the magnets and all the things, all is cat stuff. It's just,
that's my place.
You need to go to this town. It's like Venice but smaller, and I loved it. It was very walkable, especially if you stay in the city or close to the walled city. Such a cute town. Really good vibe. I kind of love a place that just, when I walk, good vibes here. That place was good vibes.
Funny coincidence. I planned my trip. It's my birthday, so I'm planning a solo trip. And then 2 friends, they started to discuss if they want to join me. And then I was, yay. My first feeling was, I'm excited to see these 2 And then with the time it started to evolve. Oh, we need to take another Airbnb. We need to take another whatever. And I was slowly, that's my solo trip. I already prepared in my head that I'm on a solo trip. In the end, I was okay, relax. And then obviously they are not coming. And I got relieved a little bit, I have to say, because like, I got back my solo trip. Hard to start and hard to give up.
Yeah, and I often don't tell too many people. I plan solo trips like weirdly, just like out of the blue. One of the first ones I did, it was like 2019. And I was just in a mood one day. So, some people go out, drink, or do something, and I buy a flight. And I was like looking up flights, and I found an inexpensive flight early December into Spain. I'm just doing it. I'm going alone. I don't care. And I bought the flight, and I was like, okay, now I got to plan this thing. I got to figure this out. Buying the flight is always the first thing, and that's what makes it real. But I don't really talk about what I'm going to do next to too many people because I do want to protect it. I just have a vision. I don't even know the vision right away. I will say Airbnb has some great features where you get like the type of place you want to stay in or do these fun searches. I'm just going to try to find a hut in the mountains. That was the one for Scotland too. I'm just going to find a place and then I'm going to work backwards. And that's what it was. I found a place I like. Okay, now I just need to get a flight. I mean, it's just really organically how I do it. But I do protect it very much. I don't talk about it, and I don't even tell people where I'm planning to go. Because I don't even know sometimes where I'm going to go. Literally, I'll just be like, what are cheap flights right now? And where have I not been yet? That's kind of what happened with this trip. I was actually in Greece and surrounding islands for 3 weeks before I came to Switzerland. You know what? I've been to Switzerland one time, and I was barely in it. I came at the end of a river cruise that was going all the way down the Rhine, and it ended up in Basel. Is that how you say it? Basel? Okay.
I think we say
Basel. Okay. Clearly, I wasn't there long enough to even learn. We literally stopped there, and then we took a train immediately from there off the boat. Technically, I've been in Switzerland, but I didn't feel like I knew the country yet, and I'm a huge mountains person. Love the mountains. I got to get back there, and I want to go to some mountains. I want to take a train through it. And I want to come back, actually. I feel like I've scratched the surface because I was here for a week. Man, I could have stayed another week or two, and I'd love to come in the winter because I think it must be gorgeous here in the winter.
I think the winter here could be different. Last season was quite good, I would say, in terms of snow and skiing areas. But the previous year was really terrible. It was almost no snow. And once there was snow in mountains, all people went straight to mountains. It was huge lines and crowds. This summer was kind of a little bit weird because it was rainy both like June and July, and it got hot only in August.
I tend to go a lot in the off season, which everybody knows this, but like I love a shoulder season. I love to travel to Europe October or March, April. I'm usually busy during that time doing other work, but I love traveling in the fall. It still has some busyness and some things are still open, but it is not as hectic as the summer. There's a lot of flights in and out of Zurich, and Zurich is a good point for a lot of American flights coming into.
Makes sense because I have many guests with layover flight in Zurich and mostly one night. I got a question. I was keeping it because I forget things. You mentioned that your gut feeling works well. How does it work, by the way?
Okay, number one lesson. Detail. Women need to trust their gut more. I will say this up and down all day long. Too many women, either we talk ourselves out of things, or we're told to like be more rational or thinking or whatever. And obviously, certainly we need to be rational, like we need to use our brains. But, there's a reason why it's called women's intuition. When I go with my gut in terms of good or bad, I'm never wrong. I was like debating doing some things on this trip. Should I do this? Should I go in this? Should I do this day trip? My gut was do it. You won't regret it. Okay, I'll do it. It's just learning to listen to yourself. The voices, when you're solo, you don't have those other voices to block out anything. You're probably in your own head or talking to yourself or something. Like you have nothing else to go on. So you have to go with your gut. That's what makes it the most empowering and like the most rejuvenating, because it's just listening to myself for once and not caring about what somebody else thinks or wants, and are they doing it, and are we doing it long enough? And like, there's none of those questions. What do I want?
Exactly, and I also can add on it when I'm not only on the solo travels, but when I go to the forest, for example, after work to refresh my brain, I realized I have many ideas Or if I go with a problem, I come back with solution. And this is so funny and powerful. Like every time I go, every time I get an answer, because you don't have noise. You are on your own. You have an issue to solve, but there is no noise. And especially powerful places like forest or where you don't even hear traffic or something like that. I really found beauty in it and also insights.
One thing I like to do before the pandemic, you can't see me, but I'm very pale and I have red hair. I was never a super outdoorsy person because the sun, I always have to wear like massive sunscreen. And so then the pandemic happened and we were all stuck in our houses and stuff. I needed to get out of the house. I was getting stir crazy. I started walking every day. And I live in a neighborhood where there's kind of a foresty area nearby. I started walking every single day, and over the course of that, I suddenly became this massively outdoorsy person out of the blue, which was to the delight of my boyfriend, actually, who was always an outdoorsy person. It was like, come on, get outside. And I was, no, I don't want to. Enjoy. Now I need to get outside. I mean, and now I like you, especially the forest. I think the forest and the mountains are my two key places, and I even make a point. It's hard when you're in a crowd, and I noticed that on this trip because it's August and everybody's traveling out there. But I found a few spots through the course of this trip where I could meditate a little bit and just sit and like pay attention. How does the ground feel? How does the wind feel? Just ground myself in nature. There's like a sense of peace that always comes over you when you can just turn out the noise and just focus on literally the here and now.
Totally. That is what we are missing a lot in our lives. Slow down and be conscious about the present moment. That's it. Mandy, I love special stories from the people's trips. Do you have a story?
I have a story. I started in Madrid and I ended up going down to Malaga. I think it was a fortress or a castle or something like that. And I'm walking and there's just we're up high and there's a great view of the city below. Old man comes up and is speaking in Spanish and kind of like, let me take your picture. He was like probably 80 years old and I could take him. That's what I say. I could take him down if I needed to. I'm like, if I needed to, I'm good. I wasn't going to try it, but he also, like, it's funny because he also reminded me of my grandfather who had died not that long before. So there was a weird familiarity there that kind of felt going with my gut. I think everything's going to be okay. It's a little weird. It's a little unorthodox. But anyway, so he took my picture and then he kept wanting to take more pictures. I guess, this is where I'm going with the story. Like, oh no, this is better. And it turned into a photo shoot. But I got these great shots because this guy was a decent photographer considering he must have been a photographer at some point. And I think he was just lonely. He had some information to share and he just wanted to spend a little time with somebody. At the end, it came down and I think I gave him a hug or something and we went on our merry way. It was probably 30 minutes of my life. I actually never went into that fortress because this kind of took the whole thing, but I just went with it. Like, this was a moment and I just went with it. And it just turned out really cute. Like, it was a special memory and I talk about it all the time because it was like 5 years ago and it's still.
Is there something that you brought from this experience? Something interesting?
Again, go with your gut. I think I had a good feeling. There's plenty of times when things have happened when I went with my gut not to do something. And feel that was the right choice. I think it's important, again, to know yourself and, again, try to have those moments like you were talking about in the forest where you don't have the noise so you get used to hearing your own voice and you kind of start feeling confident in your own voice.
Do's and don'ts.
Don't drink a lot if you can help it. Like, don't get yourself into a state where you're going to be out of control when you're alone because you just don't have anybody there to take care of you. We've all been there and done stupid things when we were younger. But I think even then I usually didn't do those things alone very much. And now, like, when you're alone, you really need to keep your wits about you. I mean, I might have a drink, but I'm not going to drink in excess. I'm going to be very mindful about where I get drinks from because people can drug your drink and things like that, especially when you're alone and you've nobody looking out for you. So be even more careful when you're in another country because conscious of what you're doing. I mean, I, keep my keys in my hand. Just like things that I would do in a big city in the U.S., honestly. I personally feel safer in every European city I've ever been in more than I do in some of the places in the U.S., and that is terrifying. But honestly, I've walked late night in Dublin. I've walked late night in London. And I'm literally less worried about it as a female alone than I am if I was walking in Atlanta or New York City. Do go with your gut when you have a feeling about something. Do go with it, good or bad. Be willing to step outside your box. Do the little things that are going to make it special, especially when you're alone. You'll need those little moments of pure joy. Do fun, random things. Like if you're thinking about it and you can afford it, just do it. Just break away from some of the things that you might normally, I don't know.
What about cultural shocks in Switzerland? That's an interesting thing to hear from American.
I mean, the fact that we have things open all the time in America, oh my God, you have to be really careful in Switzerland to be like, okay, what time is it? Is it still open? It's after 5. No, probably not. I came and was in Bern on Sunday and Monday, and I was there's nothing open here. Even Saturday night, I had to struggle to even just find a grocery store open on Saturday after 6. Where does everybody go to grocery shop? So I had to go to the train station every time. That has been my go-to thing in Switzerland. The train station is always open later. Yeah. Go to the train station. So that's where I've been getting all my meals.
Think about it a day before.
Well, there's that. But when I came, I didn't know that. You get stuck. And then who plans to be in a place that's going to be closed? I don't even think about Sunday. Because in America, Sunday, not that everything's open as long, but it's at least open for some of the day. We take it for granted that we have 7 days a week of shopping, and I'm not saying it's bad or wrong. I'm just used to it. I wouldn't even think about getting a car here. I mean, I have driven cars in Scotland and in England and stuff like that, but I would not necessarily ever think to do it here, even though it's on the same side of the road, because it's the system is so set up for it. In many ways, I wish that we were set up that way. I kind of hate driving. So I love being in a place where I get on the train, get on a tram. There's all these options like buses, and you can get a card that works for all of them. Not like every single thing has an individual ticket. I can just get a 24-hour card. Boom. Get a Swiss pass. It's very convenient, and I know if I lived in a place like this, I would use it all the time. But it can be spendy if you don't know what you're doing. I learned a few tricks in this trip in particular, ways that I could have saved more money. And now that I would know to tell somebody else coming. That's why I do this stuff. I know for the future, and I can tell somebody things that I learned. Buy tickets in advance because they change on the day of, but sometimes when you're spontaneously traveling, sometimes you don't know what you're doing until literally.
Switzerland is a lot about planning and efficiency and everything. So Mandy, what is next?
I have actually a bunch of work travel coming up. So I will be in places like in California twice in September. I'm going to be in Atlanta a bunch. So I do a lot of my work is going to be US based for the next few months. But I am trying to put together another trip, probably solo trip, and probably either just a little, I need something to look forward to for all this work travel. And I usually like to try to find something that's out of the country. So I definitely want to come back to Switzerland. Again, I want to come here in the winter. I want to do more extensive alpine stuff. But I would love to do, that top of Europe thing. That looks so cool. I would plan a little better because I really sometimes come into this stuff with don't overthink it, don't plan too much. Well, top of my list in the whole world is New Zealand. It's been that way for a long time. And until I get there, it's going to be at the top of the list. I'm going to do a little more of Portugal. I kind of finally hit that last year, but I want to do some more areas of that. But I think that's going to happen next year. My goal is to get at least 40 by 50, which is not going to be that hard, or 45 by 50, 45 countries by 50 years old. It's doable from where I am. Yeah.
And maybe some inspirational quote or a message to somebody, just something that pops up.
Book the trip. The older I get, the more I know that doesn't wait for anybody. Fear will keep you from a lot of amazing experiences. Book the trip, buy that flight, save the money to do this stuff. It's more important. These kind of experiences, I think, are way more enriching for your life than any material thing that you're going to buy. Stuff can't fill you up. Don't be scared. It's okay to educate yourself about what you might need. Use resources and plan, but don't be scared. You will not regret traveling alone. In fact, you'll probably become addicted like we are.
I think this is an amazing wrap-up. Thank you so much for spontaneously agreeing to record this podcast. Quite many interesting and very helpful insights, and I hope we see each other very soon in the winter. I think that's it.
It's like I didn't know
the end. The end.
Drop the mic.
Join me on Solo Journeys podcast, where every journey starts with a single step.